Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Undiscovered Games video podcast, where we take a look at the lesser known board games of the world and share those with you. On today's episode, I'm going to feature 3 recent discoveries of mine. These are games that are all over 10 years old. One is from 2011, another from 2007, and then I have one from all the way back in 1998. I'm just experiencing these for the first time, and I wanted to invite you along, and you can hear my initial thoughts and reactions. I just think it's so exciting when I find these little gems that have been sitting out there for my entire adult life pretty much, and I'm just now finding out about them. That whole idea just fascinates me about this hobby, and that's really what motivated me to start this channel right here. I feel like I sift through so many board games on a regular basis, just trying to find the ones that are special enough to keep in my collection and feature here and over on my Instagram page. So when I strike gold 3 times in a row, like I did this past couple weeks, that's pretty special. So I'm featuring all 3 of these games today. I've only logged a couple plays on each of these so far, so I'm still in the early stages of developing my strategies and things like that. But I can say right now that my first impressions are extremely strong on all 3 of these games, and I just could not wait to share them with you and put them on your radar, because these are definitely staying in my collection. So let's get started. First is Lancaster from Queen Games back in 2011. This was designed by Matthias Kramer, who's most known for Glenmore and Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Those Glenmore games are why I wanted to try Lancaster, and I recently found a brand new sealed copy of this out there on the secondhand market. So I grabbed it and opened it for the first time, just like I was, rewinding the clock 12 years. I posted a little Instagram video of my unboxing if you want to go check that out. But Lancaster is a worker placement Euro game. There's a couple other mechanisms here, but it's mainly worker placement and lots of ways to score points, lots of pathways to victory here. Your workers are these little knights, which are these square wooden tiles, and your knights are numbered 1 through 4 to signify different power levels. You start with like a 1 and a 2 in your possession that you can use. Throughout the game, you have to figure out how to upgrade and unlock more of these knights and get more of them in your possession to access different locations, as well as to accomplish more on your turn. I really like that the game does not spoon feed you how to do this, how to unlock more knights, how to upgrade them. It's sort of a side strategy, but it's absolutely essential throughout the game to figure out the best place and time to upgrade your knights. And I just really found that fascinating in my first couple plays, because it's not the main focus of the game, but you have to figure out how to be efficient, get more knights to be able to accomplish more on your turns. There are 3 different areas on the board where you can send your workers, your knights. First, we have the map up here, and if you send your workers up here, you have to meet or exceed the power level that's printed on each spot. So if I wanted to go here, for instance, I would have to use my level 3 or my level 4 knight. Again, you have to figure out how to unlock and upgrade your knights to these higher levels. So I cannot go here unless I have my 3 or my 4 knight available. In addition to that, once you gain access to one of these locations, you can also add squires, which are these little worker guys. You can add these to your knights to up your power level more. So if I added my 3 knight to this location and put 2 squires with it, I'm at a level 5. Why would I want to do that? Well, you can bump each other off of these spots if you exceed the power level of your opponent. So there's only 1 knight allowed on each of these locations, and if my opponent wants to come in and bump me off of this spot, now they would have to have a power of 6. So they could come in with, say, their level 4 knight and then 2 squires. That would be a power of 6. That beats mine. They would get to take over this location before I get anything from it. They bump me off, I lose my squires back to the supply, but I get my knight back to then place when it gets back to my turn. So there's a lot of bumping going on up in this map area, which I find very interesting. It's almost like area control. You're using your squires as sort of your battle strength in a way, and you're trying to push each other, strong arm each other out of these locations. And some of these locations are going to be more desirable than others at certain points in the game. So there's a nice little competition going on there, battling for position. And again, it feels almost like area control, which is pretty cool, even though it's worker placement. If you don't send your knight up here on the map, you can instead send them into your own little castle here to possibly collect some money or squires or some other little abilities that your castle gives you. What's cool about this is throughout the game, you can invest some turns in building sections onto your castle. And why you would want to do that is if you build a section, you get that bonus without having to spend a night to go there and get it for you. So as you build more sections onto your castle, you're going to get more free stuff every round of the game. So it's like a little bit of engine building there. And what's interesting is you have to decide which strategies you want to pursue. Like, do you want to center your strategy around getting lots of squires so you can bump people off of spots? Do you want to center your strategy around getting lots of money, which I'll explain here in a minute why you need money. So there's some interesting decisions to weigh. It takes a couple turns, to build up these castle sections. But if you can do that, you can really get your engine going and, be able to accomplish more on your turns. It's one of my favorite parts of this game in my first couple plays of it is I really feel like the game progresses. You start off with just a couple knights, and then throughout the game, you're upgrading, you're getting more knights, you're able to do more and more stuff, you're building onto your castle. So it's just a neat progression from beginning to the end. It's very satisfying in that regard. The last area that you can send your knights to is these battles down here, and you're going to be fighting off France throughout the game as these battles come up randomly. Every round you flip 2 of these, and what these tiles show is the strength of the enemy, here printed in this shield symbol, as well as points for having the most strength contributed to this battle. You're going to be going there with your opponents, and it's like a shared incentive here. You're going to be fighting France together. However, you're also competing with each other because whoever contributes the most strength to the battle is going to get these points printed here. And whoever contributed the second most strength is going to get the second most points, and so on. So there's a shared incentive to beat France. However, you're fighting with each other to have the most strength there. So it's sort of like a co-opetition, if you will. You're battling each other, but you're ultimately trying to beat France, and then you'll score points based on whoever had the most strength. This is another interesting part because as you're calculating your strength, whoever went to the battle last will break any ties. So let's say, we beat France here, we have more strength combined, but this player contributed 4 strength, and this player also contributed 4 strength. They tied. This player here actually gets the points. So it's kind of interesting because there's also an incentive for going to battle early. If you go to battle, you get to immediately choose one of these 6 bonus tiles to activate immediately. And these are very powerful because this stuff is hard to get in the game. This will give you money or squires or even let you upgrade a knight or something like that. So you get to choose. As soon as you send a knight down here, you pick one of the available tiles, flip it over, and use it right away. Then the next player to send a knight to battle gets their choice of the remaining bonus tiles, and so on. So there's like a little race there to go to battle and get these bonus abilities and bonus goods because this stuff is hard to come by in the game. I really like how the game incentivizes you to go to battle early or hang back and go to battle later and try to steal some free points. It's just a neat little balancing act there, and I like the battle section of the board. In addition, if you don't beat the enemy, you still get some points. You just shift this scale down to this number. So whoever contributed the most strength would get this number. But then your knights are trapped in battle. They're stuck fighting this enemy, and the battle shifts down for the next round of the game. So you have another round to try to defeat the same enemy. And then on the next round, you can send more knights here. But if you still don't defeat the enemy, then your knights become captured, and you have to pay ransom to get them back. And the ransom cost is equal to their strength. So that's one area of the game where gold is important. You cannot risk having your knights captured. It's a risk enough to send them to battle because if you don't defeat the enemy the first time, they're stuck out there and you lose out on your knights for that next round of the game. But there's a really good risk reward here regarding these battle areas and also a push and pull between the players because again, you're ultimately just trying to have the most strength more than your opponents have. So it's just a really interesting part of the game. I underestimated how much I would enjoy this battle section of the board. When I read the rules, it just kind of seemed like a tacked on part of the game. But in practice, it was fascinating to me. Now, I want to talk about the order of operations, if you will, in this game, because this is one area of the game that I'm a little iffy on, and it centers around this parliament phase. So the first phase of the game is placing our knights onto the board. We take turns, we place one knight at a time. You can bump each other off of these spots like we talked about, or you can send your knights into battle. You basically just keep placing knights until everyone is out of knights. Then you proceed to the Parliament phase of the game. And again, I'm not quite sold on this yet, but I think I will learn to like it. It just seems a little out of place when this happens, because we do not collect anything from our knights yet. Once our knights are placed, now we do this voting round. And the way this works is you have these 3 laws that are currently in effect, and then we're voting on if these new laws at the bottom are going to replace these 3 laws up top. And we vote one at a time. We have voting cubes, and you can spend them with you either vote yay or nay, and you can add voting cubes secretly. It's sort of like a blind bid, and you vote secretly, and the ties are broken in favor of the yays. And if the law passes, this one comes up and pushes these down, and this law goes back in the box. So you do this one at a time, and you have to have enough voting cubes to last you, all 3 votes. Once we do the votes, then we go around and we collect our stuff from our knights. Starting up here on the map, we go like A, B, C, like down the line here in order, and whichever player is on this location has a choice. They can either take the noble tile or the bonus printed on the board. If they want to do both, they can pay 3 gold to do both of those things. And they're both very important, and that's another reason you need to have gold money in this game. Noble tiles, let's talk about those. In your castle, you have room at your table. You're sort of like inviting these nobles into your castle to impress them, and they're going to give you sway in this voting round. They're also going to give you more points at the end of the game if you can get a lot of different nobles. You can only get one of each type, so every time you collect a noble, they sit at this table, and this is going to give you free voting cubes every round of the game. You're going to get 1 voting cube per noble that's sitting at your table. In addition, at the end of the game, you're going to get points based on how many different nobles you have. It's like a little sliding scale here. The points are printed right here on the board, so it's easy to see, and that's end game scoring. So if you don't take a noble into your possession, you can instead, like I said, do the bonuses printed up here on the board. And these allow you to do various things like upgrade your knights, add sections of your castle, like we talked about earlier, or just give you straight victory points and things like that. A lot of different neat abilities up here. And you're also keeping in mind the order in which these will trigger, because they start up here at the top and work down the line. It kind of reminds me of Kalis a little bit in that regard, as you go in order, triggering these different locations. After you do that, then we collect the stuff from our castle, and then we evaluate the battles. So this is the order that the game happens, and every time we've played this, I've only played it twice, so the 2 times that I've played this so far, when we get to that voting phase, everybody at the table kind of sighs and is like, we got to vote. And I'm sure this part of the game is important, but I don't know quite how important it is yet. It hasn't become apparent to me. It seems like a little bit unnecessary. I don't know. The game flow is very smooth up until you get to that point, because that interrupts everything you're doing. It's like you go out, you place your knights, then you got to stop and do this kind of drawn out voting thing, and then you got to return to where you were, collect your stuff from your knights, and kind of get back in to the main strategy of the game. But these laws allow you to get points and allow you to get a lot of good stuff, so I can understand their importance. It just seemed kind of out of place. It almost seemed like the law thing should happen at the end of the round or something. I don't know. It just felt out of place to me, and I'm hoping that improves. That's really my only negative from the game, is that it felt like the flow of each round was a little bit choppy because of that Parliament phase. However, I am excited to explore that more in future plays. So have you played Lancaster? Let me know in the comments below. I'm specifically interested in your favorite player count. I've only played 2 games of this so far at 4 players each, and I would love to know, does the game get better with 5 players? My initial thoughts are I would like to play the game with 5 players because of the ability to bump each other off of the areas up here at the map, as well as fighting these battles. I just think this is a game that lends itself to more player interaction with more players, and I can't imagine playing this with less than 4 players, because I just don't feel like there would be any player interaction whatsoever. So I like the idea in my head at least, of playing this with more players so there's more competition for these locations. So let me know in the comments, what's your favorite player count for Lancaster if you've ever played this? And for now, I'm going to rate this an 8.5 out of 10. That's a first impressions rating. I'm hoping that even improves with more plays, but we'll see. Next is a game called Kahuna. Now, some of you out there are probably familiar with this because this came out 25 years ago in 1998. This was released by Cosmos Games and designed by Gunter Cornett. It's a smaller box game for 2 players only, and it's area majority, area control. There's a little bit of card play in the game, but it's basically area control on a map, and I am loving this game so far. So anyway, in Kahuna, there's a map with all these different islands, and the islands have bridges going into them. If you get a majority of the bridges that go into an island, you get to place your control token on the island. So if this island, say, has 5 bridges going into it, as soon as I get 3 of these bridges placed, I get to immediately place my disc, signifying that I control this island. Now, I could lose ownership of this later, and I'll explain that in a minute. But basically, for now, I control this island because I have a majority of bridges going into it. Your bridges, as you might notice, will count toward 2 different islands. So your bridges serve a dual purpose when you're thinking about, area majority. But what's interesting is the game has 2 levels of area majority. So first, your bridges allow you to place tokens and establish ownership of these islands. But really all that matters is when it comes time to score, you just have to have more islands than your opponent. So there's 3 scoring rounds in the game, and those happen every time this deck of cards runs out. I'll explain the cards here in a minute. But at the end of the round, we score based on who has more islands, and that person gets 1 point. At the end of the second round, whoever has more islands gets 2 points. Finally, at the end of the third round, whoever has more islands gets the difference in points from most to least islands. So, that last round of the game, if I had 6 islands and my opponent only had 2 islands, then I would get 4 points. I get the difference. And that's the only points you're going to get in the game, just having more islands than your opponent. So I find that idea really interesting because it's not a very high scoring game, but it's a very thinky and a very tense game from beginning to end as you're jockeying for position and you're trying to figure out the best way to play your cards, which gets me to the card play in the game, because this is something else I really like, and it uses a mechanism that I wish more games would use, and that is on your turn, you can play as many cards as you want from your hand, but you only get to draw up 1 card at the end of your turn, no matter how many cards you played. So you really have to pace yourself. It gives you the freedom to choose, do I want to just play 1 card or do I want to play all 5 cards and unleash this big turn, knowing that I'm only going to get to draw 1 card at the end of my turn. And, you have a hand limit of 5 cards too, so you're limited. You can't just keep stocking up cards. But I just really like that idea because it gives you this freedom to pace yourself how you see fit, and you can sort of lay back and bide your time a little bit. There's a great little tension there, push and pull between both players. And this game is so tense. I really like how tense it is because it's only like a 30-minute game, but from the moment you start playing to the very end, you were just into it and going at each other back and forth. Now let's look at the cards. Each card shows 1 island on the map. I want to draw your attention to the red dot and the yellow dot. This is such a great idea from a graphic design point of view. They only included this so you could easily orient the card in such a way that you can glance out at the board and easily see where this island is. You'll notice on the board there's a red dot and a yellow dot. So if you're sitting on this side of the board, you just orient the card, match the red and the yellow so you can easily see where this island is. I just love that they did this because I'm a very visual person, and this just makes the game so much easier to visualize. I can look at the card, oh, there's that island. It's just so simple to glance out and see what's going on. Every card you play allows you to place 1 bridge. So if I played this Coco card, that means I can place 1 bridge coming off of Coco, as long as there's an available bridge space out there. So I cannot place it if my opponent already has a bridge there, but I could play this and place 1 bridge. Then I could come back and play another card and place another bridge. Again, you can play as many cards as you want, but you're only going to get to draw 1 card at the end of your turn. In addition to that, you can instead play 2 cards together to remove an opponent's bridge. And the way this works is you just have to play 2 matching cards of where your opponent's bridge is. So if my opponent had a bridge here, I could play 2 Coco cards, or I could play a Coco and a Kahu together, or I could play 2 Kahu cards. And if I play those, I immediately get to take my opponent's bridge off. This could result in them losing control of an island if they no longer have the majority of bridges going into it. It just creates this really tense and fun power struggle from beginning to end. And again, all that matters is having more islands than your opponent when it comes time to score. So if you were tied, if you each had like 3 islands, on your last turn, you could just play 2 cards and remove a bridge, which would result in them losing control of that island. Then all of a sudden you would have 1 more island than them and you would get the points for scoring round. Again, first scoring round, you just get 1 point. Second scoring round, you get 2 points. And final scoring round, you get the difference in points. So again, not a lot of points to get in this game. It feels almost like hockey in a way. You're just battling each other this whole time, fighting, and you get a couple goals and that makes all the difference in the game. I know that's a weird reference to compare it to hockey because it doesn't really feel like hockey, but just scoring wise, games like hockey or soccer where you don't get a lot of points, but it's just a power struggle the whole time. That's kind of how I view this game. My first impression rating of Kahuna after 3 plays is a 10 out of 10. I have nothing bad to say about this game. To me, this is the perfect 2-player only area majority or area control game. There's not a lot of those to choose from, but I've played about 4 different ones, and to me, this is the best one I've tried so far. If you know of any other 2-player only area control games, make sure you drop those in the comments below because I'm always looking for more games that play well, even if they just play well at 2 players. I really like Samurai at 2 players. That's the Reiner Knizia game for 2 to 4 players, which reminds me of Kahuna slightly in the fact that your pieces can contribute toward multiple areas for area majority. And same with Caesar, Seize Rome in 20 minutes is another fun one where your pieces, count toward 2 different areas. I really like that idea. And to me, Kahuna does it better than Caesar in that regard. But they're still very different games, so I don't want to compare them too much. I'm just saying, it's kind of in that same idea. So check out Kahuna if you've never heard of this or if you've never tried this one. I highly, highly recommend this, especially if you like area control and if you like 2-player only games. All right, last up today is Cuba. This is from Rio Grande back in 2007 and designed by Michael Rieneck, Stefan Stadler, and illustrated by the great Michael Menzel, one of my favorite board game artists. And you might recognize this is the same design duo and artist as the Kingsbridge trilogy of games. So The Pillars of the Earth, World Without End, and A Column of Fire, all designed by the same group of people. And that's why I wanted to try Cuba. Cuba did not disappoint me whatsoever. I might even say that Cuba is better than all of the Kingsbridge games as far as a game design point of view. It's tighter, it's crunchier, it's definitely heavier than those games. I just feel like it sort of streamlines everything those games try to do in a way that makes more sense and is a little bit less random and chaotic. Now, those games are still excellent. I love The Pillars of the Earth. I will always love that game and World Without End. A Column of Fire is okay. I would almost argue that Cuba could replace A Column of Fire in that trilogy if you totally ignore the theming. Because, let's be honest, the themes in these games are somewhat weak. I mean, this is more of a Euro game. The theme is more pasted on here. So if this had a medieval theme to it, I would say this game feels more like The Pillars of the Earth and World Without End than does A Column of Fire. But I digress. Let's talk about Cuba. This is what I call a mechanism salad Euro game. So there's all these different mechanisms. There's not a dominant mechanism, but they're all interwoven very nicely. You have resource gathering, resource management. You have contract fulfillment, shared incentives on the board. You have some tableau building or engine building. There's a market area of the board with supply and demand. You have these laws that come into effect, which you can vote on, but it's more like a blind bidding mechanism to do that. And it just so happens this game also uses laws to vote on, just like Lancaster does, which we talked about earlier in the video. I just so happened to play both of these games at the same time, and they have that similar idea. I think Cuba does the law thing much better than Lancaster, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Now, I'm not going to do a full teach of this game. I might come back later and make a video just for this Cuba game because my first impressions are very strong. I just haven't played it enough yet to do a full detailed review, but I want to give you a little overview. Each player has 5 action cards to choose from. Everybody has the same 5 cards, and on your turn, you play one card and do the action. That card is now played for the rest of the round. You can't use it again, and then when it gets back to you, you play another card, do the action, and so on. The actions on the cards are very easy to understand. They're very straightforward, but I want to note that you only get to play 4 of your 5 cards. There's only 4 turns in each round. So after you play that 4th card, whatever card you have left over is going to count toward your voting phase of the game. Notice how each card has this little hand symbol with a number inside of it. So whichever card you did not play, the very last card, that little hand symbol is going to show you how many votes you have initially. So when we do the voting phase, each player bids a certain amount with a closed fist. It's like a blind bid, and you get to add that amount of money to the number in that little hand symbol on the card. Whichever player bids the most money plus that little number on your card is the winner, and they get to decide which laws go into effect. Every round at the beginning, you flip over 4 new laws so you can see what might go into effect, and then you can decide how much you want those to go into effect or not throughout the round. Then at the end of the round, you do the voting thing, and then the winner gets to decide if those laws go into effect or not. Once they go into effect, you go around the table. Each player gets a chance to basically enact the laws or pay the taxes showing or whatever they are. And if they can do that, they're going to get a certain amount of points. So it's a really neat idea, especially because you don't lose points if you can't do these laws. It's just if you can do them, you'll get points. And it's kind of like a keeping up with the Joneses type of thing. You know, your opponents can do it, so you need to do it to keep up with them in points. You don't get any negative points. You don't get punished. It's just you better keep up with your opponents or else you're going to lose. So the law idea in this game is really, really interesting and well done. I love the fact that they basically took the random events idea from Pillars of the Earth as well as World Without End. You know how you use random events in those games to sort of track the progress? Well, this game, it does it with the laws. So it's random laws that track the progress of the game. However, players have much more sway over the randomness. Everybody gets to vote and decide which laws go into effect and which ones don't. So I really like that it still uses that random event idea, but it gives players a lot more control over it. And that's why I consider Cuba a little bit more of a gamer's game than the Pillars of the Earth or World Without End. It's just a little more serious in that regard because there's less randomness. Anyway, back to the gameplay. So that's kind of the end of the round, is the voting thing. Let's talk about each card and what those do. So the action cards in this game are very simple. Once again, you're going to play one card, do the action, and it goes around the table. Then you play another card, do the action. You go through, you play 4 of your 5 cards. And that 5th card is your voting card. The 4th action card that you play, so the final card that you get to do the action on, the hand symbol on there indicates who gets to become start player for the next round of the game. So those hand symbols work for votes and for determining start player. So that's another thing to consider when you are deciding the order in which you want to play your action cards. So what do these action cards do? Well, the worker card lets you move your little worker guy here anywhere you want to in your plantation. That will immediately activate every spot that's intersecting with your worker, so vertically and horizontally. And what that means is you can collect goods or resources from these fields, or if you build buildings, then you can play a different card later to activate those buildings. So your worker is important for gathering resources as well as activating buildings. Next up is the tradeswoman. She just lets you go to the market and buy or sell goods based on the current market prices. These market prices shift based on how players buy and sell throughout the game. It's purely just like a supply and demand market. I really like how this market fluctuates throughout the game. It really impacts your decision making. And instead of going to the market, you can just play the tradeswoman for her alternate ability. And the way that works is you can take a free good from the market, but it has to be at the lowest price. Or you can just take one of these resources, these resource cubes, just for free from the supply. And if you use the alternate ability, there's these little spots on the board. You just slide this token down to cover that up, showing that you use the alternate ability. So only 2 players are going to get to use the alternate abilities. Some of these cards have alternates, and only 2 players maximum are going to be able to activate those. So that's how the tradeswoman works. The next card here is the architect. The architect is how you build buildings. So if you activate the architect, you just choose one of the buildings from the supply area over here, and every one of these buildings is available to build from the beginning of the game. I really like this part of the game as well. You don't have to work up, toward getting higher levels of buildings or anything. It's just any building you want to build is open. You just have to have the resources available to build it. So this is where the resources come into play. You spend the required resources, and then you can build these buildings onto your plantation, your little player board here. And then later, as long as your little worker guy is intersecting with that building, you can activate that building and do its special ability. A lot of these buildings do various things like give you, ways to get points or more goods or ship things more efficiently. And I really like the resource conversion idea that these buildings use. It kind of takes from the Pillars of the Earth idea where you can convert resources, this many times type of thing. So a lot of neat buildings to explore and develop your strategy around. And that's another really important part of the game that I am excited to explore more. The Architect card also has an alternate ability that you can use instead of building a building, and that's just take 2 victory points. So the first player to use that will slide this token down. Then the next player that wants to use the Architect's alternate ability will get 1 victory point, and then that will be covered up and nobody else can use the alternate ability this round. The next card is the foreman, and this is how you activate buildings that you've already built. So as long as your worker is in the right spot, if you play the foreman, then you can activate any building that's in the row or column where your worker is. Alternately, you have the choice to pick any one of your buildings and activate just one building, if it's not intersecting with your worker or something like that. So that's how you activate the abilities of these buildings. First, you have to have your worker in the right location. Then you would play the foreman card to activate the buildings that intersect with your worker. Lots of long-term planning here for only having 5 action cards to choose from. The order of these cards is so important, especially when you factor in the voting part of it, how many votes are you going to have, as well as which card might give you start player marker, because start player is really important in this game as well. So a lot of subtle decisions. It's agonizing when you're deciding which card to play and when. It kind of reminds me of World Without End a little bit, because you have all these action choices, but you can't do them all, and it's all about the timing and when you do them. The last card is the Mayor, and this is arguably the most powerful card in the deck, because if you don't use this, you're going to get 5 votes. But if you use it, this allows you to ship merchandise onto these boats over here at the harbor. Throughout the game, these boats are going to be cycling in through this harbor and then out once they either get filled up or once they reach the bottom dock here. So any goods or products that you have in your supply, you get to ship onto one available ship, and each ship requires certain products or goods, and those items have to be placed on the matching spots, and you can only pick one ship at a time, but you can ship as much stuff as you possibly can by playing that Mayor card one time. This is a great way to get points in this game because, as you notice, each dock has a point value listed. That's going to be that many points per item that you ship. So if you manage to ship like 4 items at this dock, play the Mayor, ship 4 of these items, you're going to get 12 points on a single turn, which is huge in this game. And points are tracked on this really neat little point tracker here. I just love the way this game board looks. Once again, Michael Menzel has some of the best game boards in board gaming. And, I really think that this Cuba game board might be my favorite Michael Menzel board. I'll have to really think about that, but this one is just gorgeous. I love the way it looks. The card art is really good as well. The player board art, the box art. Overall, I would say this might be my favorite Michael Menzel artwork in any of his games. And that's saying a lot because he has some really, really good artwork throughout the industry. So you're just going to repeat that process, play 4 of your 5 action cards, vote, and then start a new round. And every round is tracked by these laws, so you know when the game's about to end. It lasts 6 total rounds, and the player with the most points at the end is the winner. There's a lot of really, really good decisions in this game. It is a tight, crunchy game. I mean, this is definitely a heavier, more complex Euro game. It's definitely not for beginners. It's not a gateway game by any means. There's a lot of long-term planning you can do in this game. So if you're the type of player that likes more strategic, long-term planning games, definitely check this one out. It's not as tactical. The only thing you really have to react to is, the different ships that come into harbor, and even those, you have multiple turns, to react to that. And the laws come out randomly, but again, you have a whole turn to plan for that, and then you get to vote on those and develop your whole strategy around that. Same with the buildings. Every building is available from the beginning of the game. So you can build whichever buildings you want and use those buildings for your strategy throughout the game. You really have to think through your entire game plan from beginning to end, which card you want to play and when, thinking about the votes, thinking about turn order, thinking about the market prices and how those are affecting, what players are able to do on their turns. So there's a little bit of interaction there. It's not incredibly interactive, but there is some competition for, these shared incentive ideas like shipping your merchandise onto these boats. I mean, that part of the game is incredibly tense, because these boats are going to shift down if they don't get filled up this round. So now next round, each good you ship is going to be worth 2 points each. And then if you can wait it out long enough, it'll shift all the way down here and become worth 3 points each if you can ship goods. But then you're risking the other players jumping in and taking the points that they can get, and then you can't ship anything with your mayor card all of a sudden. So you really have to play that game of chicken with each other. You can look around the board, you can see what other players are storing up, and you know that they're wanting to ship on the same boat that you are, but you don't know when they're going to jump. So I love that tension. Just regarding the shipping idea, there's other tension in the game that's great too, but just that alone is an awesome part of the game. You just really have to decide how far you want to push the limit, save up goods, and then try to get the most bang for your buck out of that mayor card, because the mayor card lets you ship as much stuff as you can on one action. But if you wait too long, there's not going to be much left to ship. So I love the mayor card, love that idea. And just the fact the mayor card can also be played as an alternate ability to just get money. So that's another way to get money in the game. And it can also be played just for the 5 votes. Very powerful card there, and a lot of great decisions revolving just around that mayor card, not to mention all the other 4 cards in your hand. Excellent design. I love this game. 10 out of 10 is my first impression rating. I've played it twice with 4 players each. I'm going to hold out on a definite rating until I try it with, 5 players or 3 players. The game even plays 2 players, so I'm going to try it out at all player counts, and I'll be back maybe with a full video on this game alone, because I think this one is worth covering. It's that good of a game, and it's a deep game that a lot of gamers out there are going to really love. My wife also rated this a 10 out of 10 after 2 plays, and she likes games like Castles of Burgundy. She likes Anno 1800, games that you can really plan ahead and sort of do long-term strategizing. Cuba is that. Very strong first impressions. Have you ever played Cuba? Let me know what your favorite player count is. Again, just like Lancaster, I've only played this at 4 players. I would like to try it at 5, 3, and 2 and see how that changes the gameplay. I suspect that this game, Cuba, will scale really well at all player counts. That's just my initial reaction. Hopefully I'll be back with a video on Cuba. In the meantime, make sure you're subscribed to this channel right here for more updates on undiscovered, lesser-known games. That's my whole channel's focus, is lesser-known board games that you might have missed, older games, forgotten games, maybe games that just came out that flew under the radar. That's what I'm all about. I like to focus on the hidden gems and the forgotten games of the world. There's plenty out there, and I'm always looking for more. So if you like that idea, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and follow my Instagram page at undiscovered_games. I post a lot of written reviews and pictures over there as well. If you'd like to support the channel more, there's a PayPal link in the description below. You can donate any amount you like. That just helps keep my channel alive, motivate me to produce better quality content in the future. But the best way to help the channel is to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your board gaming friends. As long as my subscribers are going up, I'm going to keep putting out videos on a regular basis. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next video.